The lights dim. The sound of a roaring jet engine fades into the frantic, almost manic beat of a heart. We see a flash of a perfect billion-dollar smile. Then another, and another, each one wider, more intense than the last. We are on a soundstage, bathed in the electric glow of television lights. It's 2005. The air is thick with anticipation. Oprah Winfrey, the queen of television, is beaming, but there's a flicker of confusion in her eyes. Across from her is the biggest movie star in the world, Tom Cruise. He's not just happy, he's incandescent, vibrating with an energy that seems too big for the room, too powerful for the camera to contain. He's talking about love, about his new relationship with the actress Katie Holmes. But words aren't enough. He's on his feet, pumping his fists. He drops to one knee, grabbing Oprah's hands. The audience is roaring, a mix of delight and bewilderment. And then it happens. In a single, bizarre, and unforgettable explosion of energy, Tom Cruise leaps onto Oprah's plush beige couch. He lands, crouched like a superhero, arms thrown wide in a victory pose. For a moment, time seems to stop. The world's most disciplined, most controlled, most meticulously crafted public image had just broken. In that single jump, the unflappable icon became a human spectacle. The immediate aftermath was a firestorm of mockery and concern. Spoofs went viral. Headlines questioned his sanity. The perfect mask had slipped, revealing something raw, unsettling, and intensely human beneath. But what was it? Was this a genuine, unfiltered expression of pure joy from a man deeply in love? Or was it something else? The first public fracture in a life built on impossible standards of perfection. A life far more complex and shadowed than anyone could have possibly imagined. What was really happening behind the megawatt smile? And what was the pressure that led to that moment of public combustion? What really happened on that stage? Could this have been the moment a carefully constructed kingdom began to tremble? Before the icon, there was just a boy. Thomas Cruise Mapother IV, born into a life of nomadic uncertainty. His family, led by his electrical engineer father, was constantly on the move, chasing a stability that never seemed to arrive. By the time he was a teenager, he had attended more than a dozen different schools, a perpetual new kid trying to find his footing on constantly shifting ground. This rootless existence was compounded by a secret struggle, a private shame he battled in every classroom. Severe dyslexia. Reading was a monumental challenge. The words on the page jumbled into an indecipherable code. It isolated him, fueling a deep-seated insecurity and a feeling of being fundamentally flawed. He would later describe himself as a functional illiterate in his early years, surviving school not on intellect, but on sheer force of will. But the greatest shadow in his young life was cast by his own father. Tom has described his father, Thomas Cruise Mapother III, in stark, unforgiving terms: a bully and a coward. He was a man who, in Tom's own words, would kick you if something went wrong. A merchant of chaos who brought an undercurrent of fear and instability into their home. The family finally fractured when Tom was just 12, his mother gathering the children and leaving. The divorce was a seismic event, but for Tom it was also a liberation from the suffocating presence of his father. This childhood, marked by relocation, learning difficulties, and the looming threat of a volatile father figure, forged in him a relentless, almost desperate drive. It was a drive for control in a world that had offered him none. It was a hunger for success and validation to fill the voids left by insecurity and fear. The young Tom Cruise wasn't just dreaming of a better life. He was meticulously planning his escape from the wreckage of his past. Could their early childhood experiences have laid the foundation for later triumphs or tragedies? His escape route was acting. It began not as a passion, but as a fluke. A high school knee injury sidelined him from the wrestling team, and searching for a new outlet, he auditioned for the school's production of Guys and Dolls. Stepping onto that stage, something clicked. For the first time, he felt a sense of belonging, a sense of control. The applause was a balm, a validation he had craved his entire life. After a brief year-long detour at a Franciscan seminary, a search for structure that ultimately didn't take, he set his sights on New York City. With the blessing of his mother and stepfather, he arrived at 18 with a singular, unshakable focus. He gave himself 10 years to become a star. His dyslexia made reading scripts an agonizing process, but his will was stronger than his challenge. He learned through observation, through listening, through an intensity that casting directors couldn't ignore. Small parts in films like Endless Love and Taps got him noticed, but it was 1983's Risky Business that made him a phenomenon. The scene of him clad in a pink shirt, socks, and briefs, sliding across a polished wooden floor to Bob Seger's old-time rock and roll, became an instant cultural touchstone. It wasn't just a movie moment, it was the birth of a brand. He was the charismatic, charming, slightly dangerous boy next door, but behind the easy smile was a ferocious ambition. He followed it with Top Gun, a film that cemented him not just as a star, but as a global icon. He was the personification of American confidence and swagger, the pilot with the aviator sunglasses and the impossibly perfect smile. He had achieved his goal in less than half the time he'd given himself. During this meteoric rise, his personal life took a decisive turn. He met the actress Mimi Rogers, an intelligent, captivating woman who moved in different circles. They married in 1987. But Rogers would introduce him to something far more influential than marriage: the Church of Scientology. Rogers had grown up in the organization, and she introduced Cruz to its auditing practices and teachings. Cruz, who had struggled for years with dyslexia, claimed that Scientology's study tech helped him overcome his learning disability, giving him a newfound sense of clarity and power. It seemed to offer the structure and answers he had been searching for his entire life. It promised a path to personal perfection, a way to unlock one's full potential, a seductive promise for a young man who had spent his life feeling flawed and out of control. His marriage to Rogers would be short-lived, ending in 1990. But his connection to Scientology would become the defining and most controversial element of his life. Was the success he achieved truly worth all the pain he endured? The 1990s belonged to Tom Cruise. He was no longer just a charismatic star. He was the undisputed king of Hollywood, an actor who could blend critical acclaim with staggering box office power. His reign began on a racetrack, filming Days of Thunder, where he met a young, luminous Australian actress named Nicole Kidman. Their connection was immediate and intense. They married on Christmas Eve of 1990, just months after his divorce from Mimi Rogers was finalized. Together, they became the ultimate Hollywood power couple. Impossibly beautiful, fiercely talented, and intensely private. They adopted 2 children, Isabella and Connor, creating a seemingly perfect family portrait that graced the covers of magazines worldwide. His professional choices were flawless. He sought out the world's greatest directors, pushing himself into new and challenging territory. He earned his first Academy Award nomination for Oliver Stone's Born on the 4th of July. A searing portrayal of a paralyzed Vietnam veteran. He went toe-to-toe with Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men, creating one of the most iconic courtroom showdowns in film history. He learned to fly jets, drive race cars, and perform magic tricks, but his greatest trick was making it all look effortless. In 1996, he took the biggest risk of his career, producing and starring in Mission: Impossible. It was a gamble that paid off spectacularly, launching a multi-billion-dollar franchise and cementing his status as a global action hero. He was hanging from wires in a vault, running from exploding fish tanks, and the world couldn't get enough. He followed it with Jerry Maguire, a film that gave us Show Me the Money and You Complete Me, and earned him another Oscar nomination. He seemed to have it all: the blockbuster franchise, the critical respect, the perfect family. Yet, beneath the shimmering surface of this golden era, there were shadows. The marriage to Kidman, while portrayed as a fairy tale, was intensely insulated. They worked together on Stanley Kubrick's final cryptic film, Eyes Wide Shut, a grueling, psychologically taxing shoot about a marriage unraveling amidst sexual jealousy and secrets. The production took years, and the lines between art and life seemed to blur. Former Scientology executives would later claim that the church grew wary of Kidman's influence, seeing her as a potential trouble source due to her father being a psychologist. Whispers began that the church played a role in the eventual erosion of their relationship. The public saw the glamorous premieres and the loving gazes, but what was happening behind closed doors? Behind all that glamour, was there an unbearable loneliness that nobody saw? The end of the golden era came swiftly and brutally. On February 5, 2001, the world was stunned by the announcement that Cruise and Kidman were separating. Cruise filed for divorce 2 days later, citing irreconcilable differences. The dream was over. The perfect couple was no more. This public unraveling was just a prelude to a far greater storm. The year 2005 would become the pivotal, cataclysmic turning point in the public life of Tom Cruise. It started with the couch. His giddy, manic declaration of love for his new girlfriend, Katie Holmes, on the Oprah Winfrey Show became an international spectacle. It was bizarre, over the top, and for many deeply unsettling. The public, who had long admired his steely control, now saw a man who seemed to be losing it. The incident was compounded just weeks later by a now infamous interview on The Today Show. When host Matt Lauer brought up Brooke Shields' use of antidepressants for postpartum depression, Cruise's friendly demeanor vanished. It was replaced by an unnerving intensity. He leaned forward, eyes fixed on Lauer, and dismissed psychiatry as a pseudo-science. He spoke with the unshakable certainty of a true believer, calling Lauer glib and criticizing his lack of knowledge on the history of psychiatry. The exchange was tense, combative, and deeply revealing. For the first time, Cruise wasn't just a member of Scientology, he was its public-facing militant defender. He had pulled back the curtain on a belief system the public found strange and alarming, and he did so with an aggressive, almost condescending fervor. The public image, so meticulously polished for over 2 decades, was shattered. The professional consequences were swift and severe. Sumner Redstone, the chairman of Paramount Pictures, the studio Cruise had called home for 14 years and generated billions for, publicly terminated their lucrative production deal. Redstone's reasoning was blunt and unprecedented. His recent conduct has not been acceptable to Paramount, he told the Wall Street Journal, a stunning rebuke to the biggest star on the planet. Even his collaborators were reportedly shaken. During the press tour for War of the Worlds, director Steven Spielberg was said to be deeply disappointed that Cruise's proselytizing was overshadowing their film. Hollywood, a town built on image, saw that his had become toxic. Some studios quietly let it be known that they would not greenlight his projects if there was any hint of Scientology promotion involved. He was no longer just a movie star. He was a liability. His marriage to Katie Holmes, celebrated in an Italian castle with Scientology's leader David Miscavige as his best man, was viewed with suspicion from the start. Then, in 2012, came the final shocking blow. Katie Holmes blindsided him by filing for divorce. The planning was reportedly executed with military precision. a covert operation to extricate herself and their young daughter, Suri, from his and the church's control. The divorce settlement was reached in a mere 11 days, with Holmes gaining sole custody of Suri, a move widely interpreted as a mother's desperate act to protect her child from a deeper indoctrination into Scientology. The narrative was no longer about a movie star's eccentricities. It was about a family torn apart by a controversial faith. Did this tragic event mark their downfall? Or was it simply the tipping point of deeper problems? In the smoldering ruins of his public and professional persona, a new Tom Cruise had to be forged. The fallout was immense. He was an outcast in the town he once ruled. The public that once adored him now viewed him with a mixture of mockery and suspicion. The charming interviews stopped. The discussions about his personal life and beliefs ceased entirely. He retreated from the public square, building a fortress of silence around his private world. In its place, he offered a new narrative, a new pact with his audience. He could no longer be the relatable everyman or the romantic lead. So he became something else, a myth. He became his own alter ego. He became Ethan Hunt. Ethan Hunt is not a character Tom Cruise plays. In the aftermath of his public fall, Hunt became the vessel for his resurrection. Look closely at the man. Hunt has no family, no home, no personal life to speak of. He is a ghost, a man defined only by his function. His only reality is the mission. His only purpose is to run, to fight, to save the world, and then disappear until the next crisis. He is a man in perpetual lonely motion. Sound familiar? While Ethan Hunt runs from rogue agents and global catastrophe, Tom Cruise runs from something far more intangible: judgment. He runs from his past, from the controversies, from the questions he will never answer. Ethan Hunt is relentlessly, desperately trying to save the world. Tom Cruise is relentlessly, desperately trying to save his career. Both men are utterly alone in their quest, and neither one can ever stop. If Hunt stops, the world ends. If Cruise stops, the applause ends. Ethan Hunt isn't a role. It's the version of Tom Cruise that is no longer judged. This reinvention was executed through the Mission Impossible franchise. The stunts became more than spectacle. They were acts of public sacrifice. He offered his own body as proof of his commitment. He scaled the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building. He clung to the side of a military transport plane as it took off. He held his breath underwater for over 6 minutes. He shattered his ankle leaping between buildings and still finished the take. This was a pact written in sweat and broken bones. The message was clear. You may not understand my life, but you will respect my dedication. You will be entertained. By focusing solely on the how did he do that, he changed the conversation. He was no longer Tom Cruise, the controversial figure. He was Tom Cruise, the last true movie star. He rebuilt his empire not by explaining himself, but by dazzling the world into forgetting. Can anyone ever truly escape from the shadow of their darkest moments? Today, Tom Cruise exists on a plane of his own creation, a myth maintained through a masterful invisibility strategy. He has deified himself through distance. Since 2012, he has not given a single deep, probing interview about his personal life. He controls the narrative completely. He has no personal social media presence. The accounts in his name are purely promotional, sanitized showcases for his work. He's become a show business monk, living a life of intense discipline hidden in plain sight. Even his relationship with the industry he champions is kept at arm's length. When Top Gun: Maverick was nominated for Best Picture, Cruise was conspicuously absent from the Academy Awards ceremony. The message was subtle but powerful. He doesn't need the industry's validation. He is the industry. This strategy has been a resounding success. The triumphant return of Top Gun: Maverick was not just a hit. It was a cultural event hailed as the film that brought audiences back to theaters. Hollywood, the town that once exiled him, now worships him. Directors like Christopher McQuarrie and Doug Liman call him the last movie star, the last man standing. He moves through the world with the same precision as his on-screen characters, a tireless showman. Yet the fortress of silence around his personal life remains absolute. His relationship with his older children, Bella and Connor, both devout Scientologists, appears solid. But his relationship with Suri is a ghost story, a subject of persistent public sadness. Following the divorce, he has not been seen publicly with her. Reports suggest his connection to her is severed, a heartbreaking consequence of his unwavering faith. Were these final decisions acts of surrender or courageous acts of self-preservation? What, then, will be the legacy of Tom Cruise? It is a legacy carved in two. On one side, the cinematic titan, but on the other, the high priest of a secretive church. And to understand that side, one must listen to the ghosts, the high-profile members who have left Scientology and spoken out, painting a disturbing picture of Cruise's role within it. Actress Leah Remini, one of the most vocal defectors, described Cruise in her book Troublemaker as the Vatican to David Miscavige's Pope. She recounted episodes of Cruise's explosive temper and the godlike status he holds, where every whim is catered to by deferential staff. She alleges that the church orchestrated a massive search to find him a new girlfriend after his split from Kidman, a process that reportedly involved auditioning Scientologist actresses like Nazanin Boniadi, only to have her dismissed for a perceived slight against Miscavige. Oscar-winning director Paul Haggis, who left the church in disgust, and former high-ranking executives like Mike Rinder, have corroborated the narrative of Cruise's centrality to the organization's public image. They describe an infrastructure built to protect him, to insulate him from any negative influence that might question his faith or the church's authority. This raises a haunting question. Was Cruise a protected, coddled figure deliberately shielded from the church's more controversial practices? Or was he a willing enabler of something darker? Was he a king in a gilded cage, or a co-architect of the prison itself? These are not just whispers. They are sworn testimonies and detailed accounts from people who were once on the inside, people who saw the machinery up close. For a man who has spent his life in the public eye, the most profound parts of his story may be the ones we will never truly know. What hidden secrets might still remain untold behind their public image? In the smoldering ruins of his public and professional persona, a new Tom Cruise had to be forged. From the ashes of ridicule and exile, he did not emerge with an apology or an explanation. He emerged with a mission. The public that once adored him now viewed him with a mixture of mockery and suspicion. He had lost control of his own narrative, so he retreated from the public square, building a fortress of silence around his private world, and in its place he offered a new pact with his audience, a new covenant written not in words but in daredevilry and celluloid. He could no longer be the relatable everyman or the romantic lead. So he became something else. He became a myth. He became his own alter ego. He became Ethan Hunt. Understand this. Ethan Hunt is not a character Tom Cruise plays. In the aftermath of his public fall from grace, Hunt became the very vessel for his resurrection. Look closely at the man, at the agent who has evolved over 2 decades of films. Hunt has no family, no home, no personal life to speak of. He is a ghost, a man defined only by his function, a specter who exists only in the fleeting, high-stakes present. His only reality is the mission. His only purpose is to run, to fight, to save the world, and then to vanish into the shadows until the next existential crisis calls his name. He is a man in perpetual, lonely, punishing motion. Does that sound familiar? While Ethan Hunt runs from rogue agents and global catastrophe, Tom Cruise runs from something far more intangible: judgment. He runs from his past, from the controversies, from the questions he will never answer. Ethan Hunt is relentlessly, desperately trying to save the world. Tom Cruise is relentlessly, desperately trying to save his own singular world, his career, his legacy, his place in the Hollywood firmament. Both men are utterly alone in their quest, and neither one can ever stop. If Hunt stops, the world as we know it ends. If Cruise stops, the applause and the forgetting ends. Ethan Hunt isn't a role. It's the version of Tom Cruise that is no longer judged. This reinvention was executed through the increasingly death-defying set pieces of the Mission Impossible franchise. The stunts became more than spectacle. They became profound public acts of sacrifice. He offered his own body, his own mortality, as proof of his unwavering commitment. He scaled the sheer glass face of the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building, a tiny, solitary figure against an uncaring sky. He clung to the side of a military transport plane as it ascended into the heavens, the wind ripping at him. He held his breath underwater for a torturous 6 minutes, pushing his body to the absolute brink of consciousness. He shattered his ankle leaping between buildings in London, and through sheer force of will pulled himself up and finished the take, dragging his broken limb out of frame. This was a new pact written in sweat and broken bones. The message was clear and potent. You may not understand my life. You may not agree with my beliefs, but you will bear witness to my dedication. You will be entertained. By focusing the entire conversation on the how did he do that, he masterfully changed the narrative. He was no longer Tom Cruise, the controversial figure. He was Tom Cruise, the last true movie star. He rebuilt his empire not by explaining himself, but by dazzling the world into amnesia. Can anyone ever truly escape from the shadow of their darkest moments? Today, Tom Cruise exists on a plane of his own creation, a myth maintained through a masterful and ruthlessly disciplined invisibility strategy. He has deified himself through distance. Since 2012, he has not given a single deep, probing interview about his personal life. He controls every frame of his public narrative. He has no personal social media presence. The accounts that bear his name are polished, professional promotional tools, devoid of any personal revelation. This is a deliberate rejection of the modern celebrity playbook, which demands relatability and feigned authenticity. Cruise doesn't want to be relatable. He wants to be an icon, a show business monk living a life of intense monastic discipline, hidden in the blinding light of the global spotlight. Even his relationship with the industry he so passionately champions is kept at a strategic, powerful arm's length. When Top Gun: Maverick was nominated for Best Picture, the film's star, producer, and spiritual center was conspicuously absent from the Academy Awards ceremony. The message was subtle but thunderous. He doesn't need the industry's validation. He is the industry's economic engine. He is above their golden statues. This very strategy was validated by Maverick's staggering success. The film's triumph was the ultimate proof that his plan had worked. He didn't win his throne back by apologizing or explaining. He won by being a better, more committed movie star than anyone else. But this insulated, godlike existence comes at a staggering human cost. The fortress he has built to protect his image has also, it seems, walled him off from his youngest daughter, Suri. Following the divorce, he has not been seen publicly with her in over a decade. The story whispered in countless reports is that his unwavering faith and its strict policies on non-believers have led to a tragic, silent estrangement. His professional triumph is shadowed by a profound personal loss. What then will be the legacy of Tom Cruise? It is a story of profound, irreconcilable duality. On one side stands the cinematic titan, but on the other the high priest of a secretive church. And to understand that side, one must listen to the ghosts, the high-profile members who have left Scientology and spoken out, painting a disturbing, harrowing picture of Cruz's role within it. Actress Leah Remini, one of the most vocal defectors, has described Cruz in her book Troublemaker as being second only to the church's leader, David Miscavige. She has recounted chilling anecdotes like being at Cruz's lavish wedding to Holmes and allegedly finding an infant Suri crying on a bathroom floor surrounded by 3 minders, including Cruz's own sister, who simply stared at the baby as if she were a suppressive person. Remini and other former members like high-ranking executive Mike Render have detailed the infrastructure allegedly built to serve and protect Cruz. They speak of a world where his every whim is law. They have corroborated claims of a disturbing covert auditioning process orchestrated by the church to find Cruz a new girlfriend after his split from Kidman. The story of Nazanin Boniadi, a young Scientologist actress allegedly selected for the role, only to be dismissed and punished for a perceived slight against Miscavige, reads like a dystopian nightmare. It paints a picture of a world where the women in Cruz's orbit are not partners, but vetted and disposable assets. The central power dynamic appears to be the symbiotic bond between Cruz and Miscavige. They are the 2 pillars of the modern church. Miscavige holds the spiritual authority, the keys to the kingdom. Cruz provides the priceless currency of mainstream legitimacy, global celebrity, and incalculable public relations value. These are not just whispers. They are sworn testimonies and detailed accounts from people who were once on the inside, people who saw the machinery up close. They force us to ask the most uncomfortable questions. Was Cruz a protected, coddled figure, a king in a gilded cage, deliberately shielded from the church's more controversial practices? Or, with his legendary obsession for control, could he truly be ignorant of the things done in his name? Was he a willing enabler of something darker? For a man who has spent his life in the public eye, the most profound parts of his story may be the ones we will never truly know. What hidden secrets might still remain untold behind that impenetrable movie star gaze?